Good morning and aloha. I go to a bunch of events. As Lieutenant Governor, we get invited to a lot. But I have never been so inspired and motivated to be here, to be in a room full of our future teachers and educators. We always hear about teacher shortage, we hear about nursing shortage, but teacher shortage is real. And how many of you went to a classroom and you had a substitute not for one day, but an extended day? How many of you? And that's the problem. And when you have a substitute teacher, it's not the same. And sometimes I remember long time ago being in a class and then you would have substitute teacher and half the class would be like, yes. And then half the class would be like, oh, because sometimes we would be either made to do your own homework or watch a movie or do something else, and it wasn't really helping us. That's what we're trying to fix. And as Joan stated, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. This year marks the 40th reunion. So I graduated from high school 40 years ago. I'm probably older than some of your parents. And I was reflecting back to some of my, not just high school days, not just middle school days, but elementary school days. And I was just 9 years old. And do you have siblings or cousins who are 9 years old? Raise your hand. And you know somebody who's 9 years old, and think back to when you're 9-year-old and you were just fifth grade. When I was just 9 years old, I left South Korea with my family and I moved here to Hawaii, and I couldn't speak a word of English. And some of you folks, when you are trying to learn a different language, whether it's Spanish or Olelo Hawaii or Japanese, it's really hard. So imagine me showing up in class on the first day not knowing a single word. And I sat in a classroom, and there was a big clock in the front of the classroom, and you all know what that big round clock is, and I would just watch the time kick away until my dad picked me up. And it was a really scary time. But there was my homeroom teacher, and my homeroom teacher took me aside every day after school on her own time to teach me English. And that was my first impression and exchange with how gracious, how filled with aloha, and how loving a teacher could be. And when you talk to any individual, any person, they will always point to one educator, one teacher, one person in their life who was a mentor, who changed their life. And for me, throughout my life, whether it was that homeroom teacher who taught me how to learn English, or my middle school science teacher, or my high school student activities coordinator, you can point to a single person who changed your life. And that is the opportunity that is being given to you to change a person's life, not for just that individual, but for them to have 1,000 possibilities of what that future could hold. So let me go back to my fifth grade experience with my teacher. So imagine being in this school, not knowing anything, not knowing even where the bathrooms were, because back then, back in the long time ago, back in the 1980s, we weren't as understanding of people with different type of language deficiencies or problems. So even when you had to find the bathroom, it was spelled out. It was spelled out as GILRL. I couldn't spell for that one moment. So girls were spelled out, boys were spelled out. So even to go to the bathroom, it was a struggle. So I had to follow a bunch of girls, and sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes you go to the bathroom, sometimes you end up in another classroom. But even through that, I remember teachers just being compassionate, helping me through the process. In my middle school, I can point to one teacher, and his name was Mr. Obata. And when you're my age, you're gonna remember that teacher. You're gonna remember what he or she did, and how he or she changed your life and what kind of experience that they taught you. And it was a science teacher, Mr. Obata, and he was very curious, and you folks too. When you see your teacher, you see that one characteristic and you go, oh, okay, you know what, different. Oh, this one is interesting. And you remember that one characteristic. Mr. Obata was missing a digit from his pointer finger, and that was something that we remember, and I would focus on that, and I would always be curious, what led him to lose his digit on his pointer finger? But he was an extremely, extremely intelligent, extremely experienced science teacher, and he taught me to love Drosophila flies. And I know some of you folks looked up when I say Drosophila flies. Drosophila flies are Hawaiian fruit flies. And the reason why I started liking Drosophila flies, which is Hawaiian fruit flies, is because they had the least number of genes. And when you're a curious middle schooler, you were interested in how do you change people's genes? And how do you, if you can change the genes of a fruit fly, can that lead to changing people's genes so that they could have better health outcome? Or you could change like people's eye color? And it was something that was really curious to me. And so back then, I was fascinated with learning more and more about Hawaiian Drosophila flies, and that love of science led me to continue my studies in high school and also in college. And so I entered the University of Hawaii studying again fruit flies. The bad thing about fruit flies is this. You go into this huge room, and the only way you can study these fruit flies is there were fruit flies in these plexiglass, and you can separate the fruit flies by with this big tube that you would have to suck up individually, but there would be a netting in this tube. That's what they didn't teach me in 8th grade. If you want to study fruit flies, you got to suck them up individually. And sometimes, I would hate to admit it, and I see your faces, you guys are all cringing already. Sometimes the net would come off, and I would have a near miss, and I would almost be having a fruit fly almost close to my mouth. But even that, I still remember, Mr. I know that's the only thing you're gonna remember about my speech. But those kind of things are something that I continue to treasure and I continue to remember. And for each experience that you have in your high school, middle school, or elementary school, how your teachers can inspire you to make a difference in other people's lives. You know, for me, when I look around, I see individuals who want to be change makers. I see individuals who want to touch other people's lives. And some of you may have come from different backgrounds and you want to share those backgrounds. One of the unfortunate reality for the state of Hawaii is we don't have enough teachers on a yearly basis. So we have to hire from different countries. We have to hire from the mainland. And some of them do not understand our culture. Some of them, in certain areas, they don't understand how hard it is to live out in Na'alehu on the Big Island. They don't understand how hard it is to drive out to leeward side on Oahu. And they end up quitting after a couple years. That's what we are trying to change. It's a collective effort for us to change how the current system is. And it takes all of us. It takes every single one of you folks to commit to ensuring that you can change people's lives in the future. I promised Arissa, or I made a comment to Arissa, who I met today. I told her, okay, be ready, because I'm going to call you up. So this is the moment. And I want you to hear from her why she thought starting something like this was important. And she doesn't have a speaking role today, but she is willing to share with you why she thought encouraging other high schoolers to get into the field of education was so important. So come on. So I am going to turn it over to the one who founded this program, who was inspired to inspire other students like you to get into the field of teaching. So take the mic.
Hi everyone, I'm Marissa. I'm a sophomore at UH Manoa now in elementary education major. What am I talking about? I started this ed convention with my classmate Haley Rogers. We used this as our senior project, and we decided to start this education convention because we noticed that there was a teacher shortage in Hawaii, and I wanted to focus on how we can keep Hawaii students in Hawaii to become teachers to support our future generations. Perfect. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you again. If you can give her a round of applause. So again, please consider the path of teaching. Please think about how you can change people's lives. And then please look at each other and look at Arissa and look at the future generation, whether it's your brother, your sister, your cousin, how much impact you can have in their lives. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the superintendent. Thank you to the Department of Education, P20, the UH system, and so many partners, Board of Education. We are all here for you. So mahalo and have a great rest of the day. Mahalo.